Welcome to our continuing series, Questions and Answers for a World in Crisis. Sadhana, Part 1. From Sri Aurobindo. The first thing to do in the sadhana is to get a settled peace and silence in the mind. Otherwise, you may have experiences, but nothing will be permanent. It is in the silent mind that the true consciousness can be built. The forces that stand in the way of sadhana are the forces of the lower mental, vital, and physical nature. Behind them are adverse powers of the mental, vital, and subtle physical worlds. There are two main things to be secured as the foundations of sadhana: the opening of the psychic being and the realization of the self above. For the opening of the psychic being, concentration on the mother and self-offering to her are the direct way. The growth of bhakti, which you feel, is the first sign of the psychic development. A sense of the mother's presence or force, or the remembrance of her supporting and strengthening you, is the next sign. Eventually the soul within begins to be active in aspiration and psychic perception, guiding the mind to the right thoughts, the vital to the right movements and feelings, showing and rejecting all that has to be put away, and turning the whole being in all its movements to the divine alone. For the self-realization, peace and silence of the mind are the first condition. Afterwards, one begins to feel release, freedom, wideness, to live in a consciousness silent, tranquil, untouched by any or all things, existing everywhere and in all, one with or united with the divine. Remember first that an inner quietude, caused by the purification of the restless mind and vital, is the first condition of a secure sadhana. Remember next that to feel the mother's presence while in external action is already a great step, and one that cannot be attained without a considerable inner progress. To be calm, undisturbed, and quiet is not the first condition for sadhana, but for siddhi. It is only a few people, very few, 1, 2, 3, 4 in 100 sadhaks, who can get it from the first. Most have to go through a long preparation before they can get anywhere near it. Even afterwards, when they begin to feel the peace and calm, it takes time to establish it. They swing between peace and disturbance for a fairly long time, until all parts of the nature have accepted the truth and the peace. It is very good indeed. The peace and silence must settle deep in, so deep that whatever comes from outside can only pass over the surface without troubling the settled calm within. It is good also that the meditation comes of itself. It means that the yoga force is beginning to take up the sadhana. Even when there is the peace and the wideness, these things, vital, physical, ego movements, can float on the surface and try to come in. Only then they do not occupy the consciousness, but touch it merely. It is what was regarded by the old yogis as a mechanical remnant of Prakriti, a continuation of its blind habit which remained after the essential liberation of the self. It was treated lightly as of no importance. But that view is not tenable in our sadhana, which aims not only at a liberation of the Purusha, but at a complete transformation of the Prakriti also. To remain quiet within, firm in the will to go through, refusing to be disturbed or discouraged by difficulties or fluctuations. That is one of the first things to be learned in the path. To do otherwise is to encourage the instability of consciousness, the difficulty of keeping experience of which you complain. It is only if you keep quiet and steady within that the lines of experience can go on with some steadiness, though they are never without periods of interruption and fluctuation. But these, if properly treated, and then become periods of assimilation and exhaustion of difficulty, rather than denials of sadhana. To remain within, above, and untouched, full of the inner consciousness and the inner experience, listening when need be to one or another with the surface consciousness, but with even that undisturbed, not either pulled outwards or invaded. That is the perfect condition for the sadhana. At last, you have the true foundation of the sadhana. This calm, peace, and surrender are the right atmosphere for all the rest to come: knowledge, strength, ananda. Let it become complete. The quietude and silence which you feel, and the sense of happiness in it, are indeed the very basis of successful sadhana. When one has got that, then one may be sure that the sadhana is placing itself on a sound footing. You are also right in thinking that if this quietude is fully established, all that is concealed within will come out. It is true also that the happiness of this peace is far greater than anything outer objects can bring. There can be no comparison. To become indifferent to the attraction of outer objects is one of the first rules of yoga. For this non-attachment liberates the inner being into peace and the true consciousness. It is only when one sees the divine in all things that objects get a value for the yoga. But even then, not for their own sake, or as objects of desire, but for the sake of the divine within and as a means of the divine work and manifestation. There can be no firm foundation in sadhana without equality, samatha. Whatever the unpleasantness of circumstances, however disagreeable the conduct of others, you must learn to receive them with a perfect calm and without any disturbing reaction. These things are the test of equality. It is easy to be calm and equal when things go well and people and circumstances are pleasant. It is when they are the opposite that the completeness of the calm, peace, equality can be tested, reinforced, made perfect. It is very good that you have had this experience, for this kind of consciousness, full of equality, samatha, is just the thing that has to be acquired, and the very basis on which a sound yogic consciousness, full of the mother, can be built up. If it can be fixed, then most of the trouble and difficulty of the sadhana disappears. All necessary changes can proceed quietly without these disturbances and upsettings which break and hamper the progress. Also, in it, there can grow a right and clear understanding of people and things and how to deal with them without friction, which can make work and action much more easy. Once this consciousness has come, it is bound to return and increase. Equality is a very important part of this yoga. It is necessary to keep equality under pain and suffering, and that means to endure firmly and calmly, not to be restless or troubled or depressed or despondent, to go on with a steady faith in the divine will. But equality does not include inert acceptance. If, for instance, there is temporary failure of some endeavor in the sadhana, one has to keep equality, not to be troubled or despondent, but one has not to accept the failure as an indication of the divine will and give up the endeavor. The overcoming of all attachments must necessarily be difficult and cannot come except as the fruit of a long sadhana, unless there is a rapid general growth in the inner spiritual experience, which is the substance of the Gita's teaching. The cessation of desire of the fruit of the attachment to the work itself, the growth of equality to all beings, to all happenings, to good repute or ill repute, praise or blame, to good fortune or ill fortune, the dropping of the ego, which are necessary for the loss of all attachments, can come completely only when all work becomes a spontaneous sacrifice to the divine. The heart is offered up to him, and one has the settled experience of the divine in all things and all beings. What I had in view when I spoke of a systematic sadhana was the adoption of a method which would generalize the whole attitude of the consciousness so as to embrace all its movements at a time, instead of working only upon details, although that working is also necessary.